deaf, the fool, and the minor. And although the minor is someone who's under 12 if they're female or under 13 if they're male, even though they know the difference between right and wrong, nevertheless they're not required to keep any part of the Torah, and their parents are responsible for their actions. And it's the Beis Din that actually has to make sure that the kids are taught properly so that when they turn 13 they'll be able to keep mitzvahs, but until then it's the parents who are responsible. If, God forbid, a minor murders someone, that kid can actually not be punished for his actions. Okay? Similarly, the shaita, the fool, cannot be held accountable. He can't because he doesn't understand what the hell doesn't understand what he just did. The fool is usually defined as someone who is crazy, and there's a whole series of criteria in which they must meet to be considered crazy. They get caught ripping their clothes, they walk alone at night, they hang out in a graveyard, they show a crazy obsession with radio talk show hosts.
Sounds like someone here.
Right. There's also another type of fool, and that's the petty, the mentally retarded. The Rambam wrote in his Mishnah Torah, Hilchas Edus, which is the laws of witnesses, in Halacha 9:10, someone whose comprehension is like a small child is called a petty, and is considered on the same equal halachic status as the shaita, and they're exempt from mitzvahs. As a result, Rav Moshe Feinstein paskin that the parents of mentally retarded people are fully responsible for those retarded people when those kids grow up and become adults, just as if they're still minors, just as parents are responsible for minors. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach wrote in his Minchas Shlomo 134 that a petty is any adult, regardless of age, that lacks the comprehension of a 10-year-old. He wrote that there are two levels of retardation, with the comprehension of a child, let's say 5 or 6, being the dividing point. Okay? So people with the comprehension of kids under that age, anyone who's, let's say, under 5 to 6, we're talking full-blown mental retards, are treated as full-blown show team. They're fools, and we don't teach them Torah because they can't possibly retain it. They're exempt from all mitzvahs because they don't understand them, and they can't be held responsible for their actions because they don't understand or appreciate what they did wrong. But a petty who has the mentality of someone, let's say, over 5 to 6, but's under 10, we do teach them Torah. We hope they retain some of it. And when they turn 13, they're responsible to do the mitzvahs that they understand at the level of, let's say, a 5 or 6-year-old, but they're forever exempt from mitzvahs that they don't understand. Very important. Very important. However, Rav Auerbach wrote that even the mitzvahs they do understand, and they are required to keep once they turn 13, nevertheless, they're not punished for their transgressions when they fail. They're not punished for their transgressions when they fail, just as a child is not punished for transgressions prior to turning 13. So, everybody, you understand that? You have any questions on that so far, Levi? Is any of that not clear? Can you repeat what I just said?
Yeah, basically what you said.
Okay, good. Okay, so again, I just wanted to recap before we go any further. According to halacha, there's 3 categories: a chereshet kotten. A shaita, which is a fool, is exempt from Torah. He's divided into 2 categories: someone who's crazy, someone who's mentally challenged. In the mentally challenged, according to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, as long as you have you only have the comprehension of being under 10 years old, you're considered a shaita. You're considered a petty, which is a shaita. You're exempt from all mitzvahs, the ones that you understand at a very small age. You have a very infantile understanding of them. You're required to keep, but if you transgress them, we don't hold it against you. That's the halacha. Now, so when a 35-year-old man murders someone, and the murderer is a shaita, whether he's a petty, whether he's mentally retarded, or just insane, he's crazy, either way, we do not hold him responsible for the murder. He cannot be punished for the crime. Either he didn't understand the mitzvah of thou shalt not murder, and therefore isn't responsible to obey it, or He did understand the prohibition, but nevertheless he cannot be punished for his transgressions for not obeying it. Understand that? Does that make sense? It doesn't matter how old the murderer is. He could be any age. It doesn't matter how old the victim is. He could be a child. We do not hold the murderer responsible. We do not seek justice against him. We do not label him as evil. He is not a monster. We don't demonize him, and it doesn't matter how many emotional Jews call for his execution, nor how many from rabbis ignorantly label the killer as evil. A recent case that grabbed the attention of the Jewish community this past week involves a murder of a Hasidic boy in New York. I think the Shoita category fits the description of the boy's accused murderer quite nicely, and I will now explain why. My first introduction to Levi Aron was when I read his confession statement. I had no idea who he was or how old he is, and as I read his words, I would guess the author was a small child. Here is what he wrote, and I will continue as we go. Here's what he said, quote, "So I asked if he wanted to go for a ride, wedding in Muncie. Since I didn't think I was going to stay for the whole thing, since my back was hurting, he said okay," end quote. Really? This is my input. Really? Any half-intelligent adult knows that his story will immediately be investigated by police who will interview everyone at that wedding. So, they will find out he's making up a wild story or not. Hence, he won't get away with such an elaborate lie. Therefore, the story must be true, or he doesn't realize he will get caught with his incredible lie very easily. I mean, if it's a lie, it's a pathetic attempt at lying. It's pure fantasy. So either he took the kid on a fun night on the town, which means he's hardly the monster everyone portrays him out to be, or he said an embarrassing lie. My money says he made that story up, and because that story is so easily disproved, he must be a child or a complete retard to think anyone would believe it. Children often make up such wild stories, and they get caught in their crazy-ass lies. It makes more sense to me to believe he's a kid than a grown adult. But let's say that he told the truth. He goes on, and I'll continue his quote. Quote, "Due to traffic, I got back around 11:30 p.m., so I brought him to my house thinking I'd bring him to his house the next day." End quote. Here's my input. Hey, genius, how about taking him home before going to bed so that the family doesn't worry about him? I mean, if the guy was sincerely a friend of the kid, as he wants us to believe in his story, then he needs to drive the kid home that night, not later. The fact that he didn't drive the kid home and actually thinks that we will accept his reason that it will take the kid home later, the next day, that speaks volumes about what a complete retard this guy is. No adult with half a brain would think any of us would accept that story. Therefore, the author is either a child or someone with the brain of a child who doesn't even grasp for a second that he's committing kidnapping and that the family members might just be worried about the kid. He goes on, quote, "When I saw the flyers, I panicked and was afraid. When I got home, he was still there, so I made him a tuna sandwich. I was still in a panic and afraid to bring him home. That's when approximately I went for a towel to smother him in the side room. He fought back a little bit and eventually stopped breathing." End quote. I believe him on that part. I believe him on that part. Everything points to him being a petty. He thinks he's doing a mitzvah by keeping the boy by him. He sees the posters, he freaks out, realizing that what he thought was a mitzvah is now considered an avera. Now he can't let anyone find out that he did a bad thing, which was never bad before in his mind. He's not going to come forward and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, my bad," because he's scared no one's going to understand him. I bet no one ever explained to him that murder is a terrible offense. I bet it was assumed that everyone knows something so basic, but it went right by him when he was a kid and his whole life because he lacks basic understanding of basic things. So, he kills the kid to shut him up, not fully realizing how horrible that is. And the support to that is that when the cops come asking merely if he's seen the kid, the dude points to the fridge and says his feet are frozen in there. What the fuck? If he knew the murder is wrong and how much trouble he was in, then he doesn't confess to a crime he wasn't accused of. quote unquote, I understand this may be wrong and I'm sorry for the hurt that I have caused, end quote. He apologizes,